What have we done to ourselves?
I don't know. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wild Ones, the Hot Ones knockoff show with wild questions and much, much wilder wings. Not officially sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings, but that is where we got them.
Yes, thank you.
Today's guest, Gretchen Figge. She's the CEO of Cornology. Welcome to the show, Gretchen.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. So the way the show works, Gretchen, is that we eat progressively spicier hot wings as we answer questions. Today, we're going to be focusing our questions around the Client Connection Summit.
Yep.
How are you around spicy food before we get started?
Oh, well, when I eat Thai food, I order mild, but I am from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere in my DNA, I am convinced that I can do it.
I guess we'll find out together. I think once we jump out of the airplane, there's no going back.
I'm a little nervous, but excited.
Well, let's dive in. First bite of Parmesan garlic. I have a feeling Parmesan garlic is going to be very doable.
It's pretty good.
So Gretchen, the summit presentation that really inspired this Hot Ones knockoff moment was by Matt Ziegler. And he talked about the Hot Ones interview with Conan O'Brien. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he talked about was the importance of balancing status like a teeter-totter. Can you talk to me about why that idea resonated with you and why you think it's important for advisors to be aware of status when they're in a room?
Well, I thought it was a brilliant analogy. The visual is so beautiful. Like if I have a ton of power and knowledge and information, it might make you feel unimportant or stupid. And if you can equalize that, it makes both of you feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so I love the analogy. I love the idea that as the advisor, if we can present hard, difficult information in a way that is kind and like preemptively telling the client that this could be difficult, that is an equalizer.
Yeah.
It helps prepare them. I think it's kind. I think it's a beautiful way to go.
Very generous thing to do.
Very much.
Yeah, and I think on the flip side, just to add to that, I think one of the other really great things to be aware of is the status between the people in the room. Like you might have parents and children in the room, or you might have a couple in the room, and one person might have more information than the other. And being the facilitator of trying to put everybody on an equal playing field so there's not uncomfortable power dynamics or status dynamics in the room can be another way that advisors can balance out that status teeter-totter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, let's move on to the next wing. This one is Asian Zing. I think we all need a little more Asian Zing in our life.
We do need.
Living up to its name.
That is also pretty good.
One of the other things that Matt Ziegler talked about in his presentation was not relying on scripts so much, and instead relying a little bit on understanding some of the tropes that might take place, but more specifically, letting your curiosity lead you instead of sticking to like a really rigid outline of this is the way the meeting has to go.
I love that so much.
Me too. I think it's a great idea. Can you talk a little bit about curiosity and how it might play a role, or how you've seen it play a role in your life when it comes to building deep, meaningful relationships with clients?
Well, often I find that if I ask more questions, if I want to know more about them and don't assume I know what they mean, things tend to go much better, because what I assume isn't always what they think. One of the things I love about this is, and just a little bit of a plug for what we do with Cornology, is we provide some of those answers before the advisor walks in the door, so they do know what the client thinks, and then they can dig even deeper into that curiosity. Like, you say this matters to you, tell me more, instead of what matters to you. That's such an open-ended question. It's a good starting place, and the goal is to increase conversations. So
if you're familiar with Simon Sinek's concept of start with why, the what we do is really obvious to a client. What an advisor is supposed to do, they're supposed to help their client grow their wealth, protect it, and build a legacy. But we often don't start with the why. If you take the question one step farther, they might come in with financial goals, and that's the what that they want you to do. But if you can get curious and figure out the why behind the what, not only are you going to have a better relationship with your client, but your clients, I think, are going to be more willing to follow through on their action items, and you're more likely to get results with them.
Absolutely. And it makes me think of, I do have an advisor that was using our system, and he was using why is it you're so concerned about getting a new advisor? And lots of people were interviewing a very high net worth individual out of New York. And she just wasn't taking on any of these advisors. And when they asked her the why behind it, she just was so worried about her daughters and how to work with her daughters. They completely changed the approach and won this massive client because they started with the why.
Everybody else was focused on the what.
Everybody was focused on the what. And
but when our client
natural.
used Chronology and helped this person explain their why, that client was like, oh, you understand my motives, so I'm going to go with you.
Well, and they behaved differently. They gave a different what because they understood the why. The what changed. And so that's amazing.
Love that story. Thanks for sharing it. All right, let's move on to jam and jalapeno.
Okay.
Wing number 3. And after this one, we're halfway through. God, these are good.
These are pretty good. They've got a kick.
Jess beautifully spoke about and made everybody aware of the wealth transfer that's coming up. The great transfer, well, they're calling it the great wealth transfer. It's the greatest transfer of wealth in human history that's coming up. And one of the things that she mentioned would be good for every advisor to do and also every client to do is take a long walk in the woods. What did you like about that idea? And can you share maybe what that might look like in the context of having these financial conversations?
Well, I think for her, when she was discussing a long walk in the woods, she was worried about advisors are seeing a market change. And it's time to say, what do I want my practice to look like? Where am I going with that? And when you decide what you want it to look like, then you decide how you're going to now engage your clients. So you could say, I'm okay with where I am and I'm okay with what's changing and not make any changes. But if you see a long game of change coming and you want to make changes, then the advisor in that long walk in the woods would have to say, what am I going to do? How does that affect me? What does that mean to me as an advisor as I take this challenge on?
There's this thought that pops into my mind of like, you need to diagnose something before you treat it. And
Yes.
I think a lot of people come in and say, I know I want to build my wealth, or, I need to have a plan. And they expect you to have, as the advisor, to have the answers. And ultimately, like, the best thing that you can do in a lot of cases is give them some questions to ponder to get clarity around what they actually want and what their goals are and why, and then help them build a plan off of that. If you just slap a generic plan onto them when they walk in the door and you say, yeah, I got you covered. Like, give me your accounts, tell me your net worth, what's your goal for retirement, and we'll build a plan to get you there. Like, eventually they're going to feel frustrated. They're going to feel like a number. They're going to feel like you don't really care about them as a person. All you're doing is managing their finances. And especially this younger generation, I think, has some different expectations.
Yeah, and I think we saw a theme throughout the full summit, and that is moving forward, advisors are going to become more partners with their clients instead of just being information givers and solution providers. All the information is out there. The internet knows more than we do. And so most of the younger generation is already learning it. It's like they go to buy a car. They already know what they want. They know the features. They've researched everything. They want a partner in how they approach their finances. And so that is part of this walk in the woods.
Great. Let's take another bite. This
is going fast.
This next sauce is mango. You say that now, but the rest of our day might go really slow after these last couple wings.
It's like I breathed in heat as I ate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't taste great.
Not my favorite. Well, let's move on to Emily.
Yeah.
Emily Kuchel's presentation. I love that you talked about wives, women,
Oh,
people who are often left out of the conversation. Can you share some perspective on what it's like to be left out of the conversation, or why you think so many wives are not engaging in that conversation and why it's so important to do so?
Why are they not engaging? I'm really not sure. I think maybe they don't feel important. They don't feel heard. They don't know that they have a place at the table. I think women as a whole feel that way often. It's unfortunate. I go into lots of corporate rooms and see women sit on the side instead of at the table. And that might be just an analogy for what's happening in these situations. I talked to a financial advisor, female, who is incredibly intelligent, capable, and she goes to meet with her advisor with her husband, and the advisor talks to her husband. She knows everything. She's fully informed, and he talks directly to the husband. I think it just is a little bit of where that society hasn't changed yet, unfortunately. We as a society are fixing those things, I believe it, but especially the generation that is in the great wealth transfer, they came from before we were fixing some of these things, and the women just didn't feel like they had a place at the table. So they weren't heard, and as a result, are not connected to that advisor.
And on average, I think women tend to marry men that are older than they are, and women also tend to live longer. And so one of the biggest recipients of inheritance, if you will, in the next 10 to 15 years is going to be women. A lot of husbands in traditional heteronormative relationships are going to be passing away, and their kids aren't going to immediately inherit their wealth. The wife is going to be left to manage the estate.
Right.
And can you talk a little bit more about that, the consequences of that?
70% of the time, women are leaving their advisor when they inherit that wealth. So in the first step of the great wealth transfer, women inherit the money and they do not stay with their advisor. I believe it is because they're not being heard. They don't feel heard or connected to. And so the nice thing for us, chronology, is our processes allow for the advisor to know what the woman thinks before she walks in the door. And then you can engage so easily and give value in a place that if you're asking a question to a husband and wife and they're both sitting there, you don't know if the wife will answer. It's not the advisor's fault. She is just not saying anything. But if you walk in with an answer and say, Sally, I see your number one priority is X, they already know.
All right, let's dive into our second to last wing. I think we're
Okay.
going to start regretting things now. This
I'm ready.
one is
I'm ready.
Golden Fire.
It says fire.
I should not have licked my finger.
It actually flavor's not bad.
I can get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
My lips are definitely tingling.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I've got some spice, but it's pretty good anyway.
Oh, you're gonna go for another bite?
I might, yeah.
Yeah, that was not as horrible as I. Well, let's not speak too soon. This might creep up on us over time. My mouth is filling with flames. All right, last question about Emily Kuchel's presentation. You starting to feel it now?
A little bit.
Yeah. All right. One of the things she talked a little bit about is involving the next generation in the conversation.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to baby boomers, their vision, their concern historically has been, how do I grow my wealth?
Yes.
Now, many boomers have amassed enough wealth to retire. Another question is, how do I transfer this and trust that my children are ready for it? So can you talk to me about how an advisor might involve the next generation in a conversation about their parents' finances or their parents' legacy and why that's important?
I'll talk for myself. Anytime I see anyone engaging in helping my child become better, and my kid is not an adult yet, but anytime I see that, I get the warm fuzzies. And so it makes me so happy to see my child engaged and cared for, and somebody is helping him that is not me. I think that umbrella within the financial world is huge for two reasons. Advisors help their clients feel great. They feel connected, in a whole new way, especially the wife that we just talked about is having issues, not connecting. And then the next generation is not that young anymore. They have their own wealth. And so if the advisor has a reason to connect to the next generation and help them with anything, they are now aware of where their parents are, what their parents need, and they could get a whole new client. And then eventually they're going to inherit that wealth. And so they have their personal wealth and their parents' wealth. That great transfer is happening, and this millennial generation is getting it all. And the millennial generation is different. They want to have an advisor that treats them differently.
Yeah.
And they're saying up to 85% of the time that next generation leaves the advisor. And so how do you stop that? Preemptively connect.
Preemptively connect, and just to add one twist to it, preemptively connect in a meaningful way. I think it's been proven over and over again that the financial industry is one of the least trusted industries, and they're even less trusted by the millennials and Gen Z than they are by the baby boomer generation. And so if your first touch point with the next generation is, hey, let me see your bank account, or hey, let me give you some financial advice, you might come across as really sleazy and salesy, use Carl Salesman kind of vibe. And that's a big part of what turns people off. But if you can engage that child of your client, that heir, in a meaningful conversation about their values or their goals or the things that they're passionate about, help them solve some personal issues or have a conversation about their legacy and their involvement in that legacy, that's a whole different conversation. And you can start that relationship off by building a lot of trust and rapport without ever even talking about a 401k or a bank account or a Roth or whatever.
Well, I loved Emily talked a lot about help the family communicate not the money, but the why behind the money. So once again, we're back to the why behind the money. Why is it that I have this? What do I want to happen for my family? What is my value within it? And we're lucky enough that Chronology does help families understand what their core values are and how those connect to each other within the family. And so it is a tool to help the advisor know that information as they walk in the door.
Beautiful. All right, let's dive into our last wing.
I don't know how I feel about this.
Blaze
This
and
is supposed to be really,
knockout.
really rough.
Well, I'm not dying right now,
Okay.
so bottoms up. Cheers.
I'm super nervous. I'm watching you first.
We're supposed to go at the same time? Oh, this is a bad decision.
It doesn't taste good.
There's very little redeeming about that wing. That wing.
That is not good. It's really hot.
All right, Gretchen. Our last question of the day. Andrew Howell's presentation, co-founder of Chronology, had a really cool personal story about being raised in a wealthy family of estate planners, and then becoming a lawyer himself and having a career where, when he was formally really involved in finances and cared a lot about it, realized that he was running basically a trust mill. Talk to me about what you found interesting about that conversation.
That is pretty hot stuff. My mouth is burning. But Andrew did a great job of talking about how he was taught to care about the client. Then it changed. Then he went into a world where he was not caring about the client. And that really is how we evolved in what we have today, because Andrew and David.
It hurts to breathe.
They really just they wanted to bring that personal connection back and help other people do that also. One thing I loved about what Andrew said, and so insightful, is people are not, oh, my brain is not working.
Yeah, that's the motif of this show.
I might have to look at a note.
Does it have to do with peace of mind and security?
Yes, it does. It has to do with peace of mind and security. Thank you. People are not, their security is not based on their money. Their Their security, a lot of that peace of mind and security comes from having that secure relationship. And when they feel secure within the relationship, the rest of it falls into place.
Yeah.
And so that's where we want to start.
I think there is a certain point when you're acquiring wealth where you don't become as concerned about your financial stability, and the primary concern shifts to your relationships. Your primary concern shifts to, are my kids prepared? Is my
Do they understand who I am?
Joyce,
do they understand what our family legacy is?
Yeah.
Our family legacy is not just our wealth. Our family legacy is our human capital.
Yeah.
Oh, we could just cry about this because it's so hard. Our human capital is so important. And when you put those together, you get legacy. And so I feel like that is where Andrew was going with those comments.
Well, Gretchen, we have scaled the Hot Wings ladder up and down. Before we sign off, you can look right down the barrel of your camera and talk to the people. Tell them one thing that you would love them to do at the conclusion of this summit.
I would love, if you have any questions at all, we would love to answer those questions. And ultimately, if you want to understand our process and how we're helping solve this through our software, Chronology, we would love to show you what we have to offer.
What's your email address?
It is Gretchen@chronology.com.
Great. And there will be a link down below this video where you can book a demo or get some more information.
Does it look like my lips are fires coming off of them?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have the bee sting lips by the end of the day. That last bite was. In 2 hours from now, I'm going to be feeling that on the other side of my body.
Good job.
Good job to you.
Just a side note, I wanted to do the Hot Wings Challenge because really we're asking advisors to do something hard. This is hard and complicated and challenging. And why wouldn't we do something challenging also?
Yeah, if we're going to invite you to step outside your comfort zone, we will do it along with you. This was not, I was dreading this all day, but mission accomplished. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It sucked.
Right.
But I conquered the wings.
But imagine if we did this all the time. It would get better and better and better.
I don't want to do it all the time.
Come on, Nate.
No, I think you do build up a tolerance, and who doesn't like a chicken wing, right? And who doesn't like a happy client?
Exactly.
All right, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.